Well, our top story this morning is an international one. At least 80 people have been killed and another 100 injured in the southern French city of Nice after an attacker drove a lorry into a crowd celebrating the Bastille Day national holiday.
The attacker behind the wheel drove at high speed along the seafront promenade, hitting the mass of spectators who had been watching a fireworks display. Police later shot and killed the driver. France's interior minister said 80 people were killed, including children, and 18 are still in a critical condition.
The truck was loaded with weapons and hand grenades. It drove onto the sidewalk for more than a mile, ploughing through revelers who gathered to watch fireworks.
Now, French President François Hollande announced the extension of France's state of emergency by 3 months in the wake of the attack. The state of emergency, in place since November attacks that killed 130 in Paris, was due to be removed on the 26th of July. Hollande said he would submit a draft law to the French Parliament by next week.
I have decided that the state of emergency, which was due to end on the 26th of July, will be extended by 3 months. A bill will be submitted to Parliament by next week to this effect. Nothing will lead us to give up our fight against terrorism.
Middle of the night, added with that from French President François Hollande, and truly the headline there is that the state of emergency will be extended by another 3 months. This comes just hours after the French president had announced that he could not extend the state of emergency forever. He said that that would make no sense, but after this tragic attack in the southern town of Nice, the French president had to extend the state of emergency for another 3 months. We're also heard from French President that there will be beefed up security measures, including from the Sentinelle operation, allowing military officers to patrol areas, sensitive areas in several towns of the French capital. François Hollande also saying that this was indeed a terror attack, adding that France is horrified, but that France will beat terrorism.
Well, plenty of reaction has been coming in from around the world this morning after the deadly, brutal attacks. Let's listen in to some of that reaction.
Our thoughts go to the families of the victims, to those who've been deeply affected and plunged into sorrow, but also to all the residents of Nice who are traumatized and scared.
Without having all the details, it seems that the truck driver carried out a premeditated and planned act. We can perhaps draw several conclusions from that. It appears that he fired several rounds from the window and that he was killed.
Important is to understand what is the map of the enemy. This, I could call them the jihadi Salafi enemy. What is the actual map? Is it concentrated in zones, the ones you call, sensitive, and the ones we call here also, a high density of foreign fighters or others? The question now is going to be, are they connected? Are these cells connected? This is what French authorities are going to go after, and then international authorities would help them. Is there a network across Europe? Is that network connected or not to ISIS? If we defeat ISIS, if we push back against ISIS, does that mean necessarily that we are weakening the ones on the continent and even here in the United States? So many questions are going to be asked now. Just say one thing. Today, looking at these pictures, and that was on American TV, the scene that we saw by security apparatus in France and Nice after the attack is the exact system that would stop the next attack. The problem is in our liberal democracies, can we afford that? Can we afford having roadblocks and and deployment of heavy equipment across our cities? It's going to be a very tough debate, very difficult one.
Now, to discuss this further, we're joined on the phone line by Martin Iwi from the Institute of Security Studies. Good morning to you, Martin, and thank you for joining us here on VUCA Africa this morning. There's been a large debate on various attacks across the globe and whether we are too quick to jump to conclusions that it is a terrorist attack. Can you call what happened in Nice a terrorist attack, in your opinion?
Well, that's true. My worry is that when we jump to such conclusion, we could actually give the terrorists, the tactics and the possibility in the future to claim any attack as a terrorist attack. Now, what's happened, I'm also saying is that, yes, terrorists nowadays are capable of carrying out any attack. There is nothing really that limits their modus operandi. But whatever way, for us to describe an attack, a terrorist attack, is not an emotional decision. This must be a decision informed by facts of the case, which means there must be a thorough investigation. And it's not also only about whether the terrorist group or a terrorist group comes out to take responsibility, because that alone is not also enough to make an attack a terrorist attack. The planning, the premeditation and everything, we have to make sure that it was tied to a terrorist group, and that there was some sort of planning from their side, and that there was some sort of objective from their side. Not really just when individuals who might be disgruntled with the government carry out attacks and then want to attribute it to a terrorist group. If we do that, I think we'll be missing the substance and the fact of many cases, which could complicate terrorism in the future.
Now, Martin, just looking at it from a sort of perspective, we're looking at the visuals now on our screens of this truck driving down a street. Now, let's just look at it from an objective perspective. It's a truck, a big truck, driving down a street. One gentleman sitting inside, and he's literally shooting at people along the high street. Now, are we always too quick to jump to the fact that it could be a terrorist attack and not just, an insane person?
Well, you see, people who might have had problems, people who might, want to carry out this kind of attack. You can have a perfect scenario like that of individuals just going down the street and trying to terrorize everyone. But is that attack related to a terrorist attack? Is a terrorist group involved in it? I think this can only be proven by investigation. Otherwise, it could just be a hate crime. Because the challenge we're having today is really to draw the boundary between hate crime and what is terrorism. You see, that's the problem. But I'm not saying that terrorists are not capable. Today, there is a big blurring between what terrorists can do and what they are capable of doing, because terrorism today is now more and more becoming lone wolf, which means that individuals of all walks of art can plan and carry out attacks in their own fashion without having really to get dictate from that terrorist group in terms of what they should do and cannot do. So terrorism today is very open-ended.
Well, thank you, Martin, for your time. We appreciate you talking to us here on VUCA Africa and ANN7 this morning. That was Martin Iwi from the Institute of Security Studies. But we are going to keep the updates coming in here on ANN7. Let's go to France 24 now for the latest updates.
Terrorist attack is once again a very violent act, an absolutely violent act, and it is quite clear that we must do everything to fight against the scourge of terrorism. The driver was shot dead. At this point in time, we don't know if there were any accomplices, but we are doing everything to identify the individual and to find any possible accomplices. France was struck on the day of its National Day, the 14th of July, a symbol of freedom, of liberty. Human rights are denied by these fanatics, and France is obviously their target. I would like to express on behalf of the nation our solidarity with the victims and with their families. All resources, all our means are being deployed in order to help the injured. The White Plan, which mobilizes all the hospitals in the region, has been set off. Following Paris in January 2015 and in November of last year with Saint-Denis.
Voilà que Nice
Nice,
est à son tour
in
touché.
turn, has been
C'est toute
affected.
la France
It is France
qui est
as a
sous la
whole
menace
which is
terroriste
threatened
islamiste.
by Islamist terrorism.
Alors, dans ces
In
circonstances,
such
nous devons
circumstances,
faire la
we
démonstration
must show
d'une vigilance
our
absolue
absolute
et d'une
vigilance
détermination
and
sans faille.
determination.
De nombreuses mesures ont déjà
Many
été prises.
measures have already been
Notre arsenal
taken.
législatif a
Our
été
laws
considérablement
have been
renforcé.
reinforced,
Mais nous devons,
but
puisque nous sommes dans une période
as
estivale,
we are in the middle
rehausser
of summer,
encore
we need
notre niveau de
to
protection.
enhance our level
Aussi,
of
j'ai
protection.
décidé,
So I have therefore
sur
decided
proposition du Premier ministre,
on a proposal submitted
et
by the Prime Minister
avec les ministres concernés
and
de
with
la
the
Défense
other
comme de l'Intérieur,
ministers concerned, the Minister
nous allons
of the Interior
maintenir
and
à
of
un haut
Defense.
niveau
We will
l'opération Sentinelle,
maintain
celle
the
qui
Sentinel
permet
operation
de
at its
mobiliser
highest
10 000
level.
militaires
It allows us to
en plus
mobilize
des
10,000
gendarmes et
soldiers
des policiers.
in addition to gendarmes and
J'ai
police
également
officers.
décidé
I have also
de faire
decided
appel à la réserve
to call
opérationnelle,
on our
c'est-à-dire
operational
à tous ceux
reserves,
qui
that is to say,
ont un moment
all those
été sous les
who
drapeaux
have been
ou,
members of the
ont
armed forces
été
at one
dans
time
les
or
effectifs de la
another,
gendarmerie
or have been part of the
pour
gendarmerie
venir soulager
in order to
les
relieve
effectifs de
the
policiers et de
police
gendarmes.
forces, the law enforcement
Nous pourrons les déployer
organizations.
sur tous les
We'll
lieux
be able to deploy
où nous avons
them
besoin d'eux,
wherever we need them,
et en particulier
and
pour le contrôle
particularly
des frontières.
to protect and
Enfin,
monitor our
j'ai décidé
borders. Finally,
que
I have
l'état
decided
d'urgence
that the state
qui
of
devait
emergency,
prendre fin
which
le 26
was
juillet,
due to end on the
serait
26th of
prolongé
July,
de 3
will
mois.
be extended
Un projet de
by
loi
3
sera
months.
soumis
A bill
au
will be
Parlement
submitted to
d'ici,
Parliament
la semaine prochaine.
by next week to
Rien
this effect.
ne nous fera céder
Nothing
dans
will
notre
lead
volonté
us
de
to
lutter
give
contre
in,
le
to give
terrorisme.
up our
Et
fight
nous
against
allons
terrorism.
encore renforcer
We
nos
will
actions en
continue
Syrie
to
comme en Irak.
reinforce
Et nous
our
continuerons à
actions
frapper
in Syria and
ceux
Iraq.
qui, justement,
We'll
nous
continue
attaquent
to
sur notre
strike
propre
those
sol
who are attacking
dans
us
leurs repères.
on our own soil.
Je l'ai annoncé
I
hier matin.
announced yesterday morning
Un
what we
conseil
would
de
be doing.
défense se tiendra
A Defense
demain.
Council meeting will be held
Il
tomorrow.
examinera toutes les
It
mesures
will consider
que nous avons
all
déjà
the
prises
measures
et que
we've
je viens
already
d'annoncer.
taken and which I have already announced.
Permettra ainsi le déploiement
This will
de
allow
tous les
us to
effectifs
deploy
nécessaires
all the necessary
dans tous les
resources
sites et dans toutes les villes
wherever
où nous avons besoin
we need
de
them,
protection et de
wherever
vigilance.
we need protection
Je me
and
rendrai
vigilance.
avec le Premier ministre
With the
à
Prime
Nice
Minister, I will be visiting
à la
the
suite de
city
ce
of
Conseil
Nice
de défense
following the meeting
pour
of the Defense
soutenir
Council
la ville,
in
ses
order
élus
to
dans
support
cette
the
épreuve
city, its elected
et pour
officials,
mobiliser tous les
and to
moyens
mobilize
nécessaires.
all the necessary
La
resources.
France
France
est affligée
is deeply afflicted
par cette nouvelle
by
tragédie.
this new tragedy.
Elle est horrifiée
France is
par ce qui
horrified
vient de se
by
produire.
what has just occurred.
Cette monstruosité
This
qui
monstrous
consiste
act, which
à
consists
utiliser un camion
of using a truck
pour tuer
in order to
délibérément
deliberately kill, intentionally
dizaines de
kill
personnes
dozens of
qui venaient
people
simplement
who were simply
pour fêter
celebrating
le 14
the
juillet.
14th of July.
La France, elle est éplorée.
France
Elle est
is
affligée, mais elle est
afflicted,
forte.
but France
Et elle
is
sera
strong,
toujours plus
and
forte,
France will
je vous
always be
l'assure,
stronger, I assure
que les
you,
fanatiques
than the
qui veulent
fanatics
aujourd'hui la
who
frapper.
want to strike France today.